Hello, Alice.
Hi, Panayota.
You are coming to Athens in June to teach Sei-ki, a four-day Sei-ki workshop. Would you like to tell us what Sei-ki is?
Yes. Now, you'd think that I would know better than anybody else what most people, what Seiki is. And yet, I also, when people ask me that question, I often also think, oh, what is Seiki? What is Seiki? So it's very interesting that that still happens to me after all this time. So here goes. So Seiki takes the form of a bodywork. It's a bodywork practice. So we put our hands on people, and in a very basic sense, people feel better. They come for health reasons on the whole. And yet, I think what we struggle with when people ask that question is what we want to say is, but it's so much more than that. And that we don't want to limit it to this sort of basic sort of medical health field. But it does very much work as well in that way. You can talk about it in those terms, but it also is a human connection. Is a very particular, powerful human connection, which also usually can have a very profound effect on one's emotional and mental being, as well as the physical. In fact, these are completely related. But even more than that, it touches our humanity in a way that I've heard it called medicine for the soul, and it really helps shift the emphasis away from the dramas of life, including mind, body, emotion drama, noise, and brings forward, it's like it re-emphasizes things so that what comes forward is the real self, the true individual. And so at its most profound, effective, interesting, it makes us feel, it leaves us feeling more ourselves and coming from a much more steady, centered place. So Seiki, practically speaking, is about physical touch, it's body work, but it has this much greater dimension of bringing us back to ourselves.
Okay, it sounds very interesting. And you have been practicing Seiki for over 35 years.
Yes, I guess. Well, I've been practicing. I started with Shiatsu back in about 90 or 91. And then in about 97, 98, I started with Seiki. So however long ago that is. So that's 20 something years in Seiki.
And would you like to share with us an experience of your personal journey throughout these years of Seiki?
Well, I suppose that my first contact with Seiki, well, it wasn't quite my first contact. It was the first contact I had with Kishi, who was the founder of Seiki. Because I've been looking for something. I've been doing shiatsu, and it didn't have what I'd been looking for. It was something for me, I was still looking. And when I met Kishi, it was just him and me in a little room, and I'd gone for a session with him, and I found him very intimidating. He was, looking back, I'm not sure why. I think he just had a great presence, and we didn't say much to each other, and he's indicated that I should lie down. But as soon as he knelt beside me on the futon and picked up my wrist, really, my hand, this great relief came over me. And this was how I wanted to be met. This was how I wanted to be touched. And I mean touch, not just a physical touch, because I mean, that was very skilled, but it was much more than that. It was about being met. And I thought, this is what I've been looking for. This is how I want to be met.
Okay. Okay. And after this first session you had with Kissy, then how did you go on?
Well, I immediately decided that this was it. This was what I was going to, I was going to learn this. There was no question for me, because it spoke to me of truth. It had something of truth about it. So I very quickly found myself organizing a workshop for Kishi, and at that time he hadn't offered a workshop in the UK for some year. I'm not sure how long, but it was a few years. And so I went about organizing that first workshop for him, and then I did that for several years. And I would just go on workshops when he was around, or once, twice a year, and a residential. But the main thing was that I just decided this is what I was going to do, and it was as though I recognized something about it. Something about it was something I could just catch a feeling. And so then I had to practice. I had clients. And from that moment on, I was trying to find that feeling in the sessions I did with my clients. So it was a mixture of, so the training was a kind of training myself, and always coming back to base, back to Kishi, back to a workshop for a to have that feeling refreshed. And then I would go again and work to find this feeling with my clients.
Okay.
And I was determined. I was kind of ruthless in a way, because I knew that I wanted truth, and I only wanted truth. And so it's quite hard work, really. So I was just dropping everything that didn't feel like truth in my hands, in my work, and just going for it.
Okay. And I know that it was you with Kissy who wrote the book, the very first book about Sei-ki, about this work.
Yes. Well, actually, Kyoko, Kishi's wife, also. It's like Kishi and I decided to write the book, but without her pushing him and getting words out, really giving him a hard time sometimes to get him working when I wasn't there, and sending me stuff. It wouldn't have happened without her either. Yes, that happened one workshop. I was on a workshop, and it was, I'd been on many workshops, and I'd written several articles about Sei-ki. And somebody asked a question in the workshop, and Kishi turned to me and said, I can't even remember what it was, but he said, you should write an article on this. And I said, no. I felt articles don't change anything. Nobody reads, hardly anyone reads articles. So I said, no, I won't write an article. Let's write a book. And he looked at me, and he said, okay, let's write a book. And then it was set. It was clear. I think we started writing, I can't remember, a few months later, we just got together and we did it. And it was just from that very clear point in the workshop.
And it was a very good decision. And the timing was very good, because after a while, Kissy passed away.
Yes, it's strange. I mean, people say, oh, he obviously knew he was dying, and but he didn't. I don't think so. I That's not the feeling when we were writing. It didn't feel, it felt like the beginning of something, not the end of something.
Mm-hmm.
He was, for the first time, it's very easy to put a story onto this, really, if you don't know, but we were exploring and experimenting and researching, and he was excited. And for the first time, he was looking at his work from a little distance. And I was putting it in context, and he'd never thought of it before, in context.
In
And so
context.
in the context of a longer history of therapeutic methods, or the history of touch methods, or really, I was also joining some dots, if that you understand.
Mm-hmm.
I was saying, oh, but you've brought Katsugan into Shiatsu, and he would say, oh, yeah. So so he was. I think he'd just carried on in his life before. He'd just been doing this and doing this and doing workshops, and in a way, he hadn't been very. In fact, he said, well, he wasn't very interested in how people learn, or whether they learned or not, or why people didn't learn. He hadn't been very, in some ways he'd been a lot more interested in collecting antiques, and Sei-ki was something that he did as well, but his interest wasn't always there. But when we started writing, he started looking at his life before with Masunaga, with his teachers, and really remembering his love for them and his respect for them. So it felt like he died only a year after the book was published, or a year and a half, but it felt like a beginning at the time. And we were talking even soon afterwards about rewriting some bits, that he was having many ideas and making many notes, and he wanted to do a new version of the book. And so I personally don't think he had any sense that when we were writing that he might die so soon. I mean, we started writing we talked about it in 2009, and he died in 2012. So it's a few years.
Yes, yes. And how is it for you now when you go back and look at this book?
I hardly ever look at it. It's actually quite a strange experience the one time I read it again. It's because, for me, I'd taken a year out to write the book. I'd gone to live with my father and my stepmother, and they'd really supported me. And it was a very important part of my life for a year. And, the book was very much the three of us, or in some ways, me and Kishi, together. I mean, there was many of his ideas, but there's also quite a lot of my input. So I saw it as very much our book. But I kept hearing people calling it Kishi's book. And I would always find this a bit strange, because, it was such a such a close project. So I went back, when I was writing it, I wanted to make myself invisible. That was my intention. And so when I finally went back and read it, I thought I was very successful at making myself invisible. And that was a little shocking to me, I think. That was the main thought. That was interesting to me, that I was so successful at making myself invisible. And then I thought, oh, maybe I don't want to be so invisible. Maybe I want a bit more, a little bit more acknowledgement. But anyway, I think people like the book, and the book has to be, we gave it to the world, and we both felt now it's like a child. It has to live its own life. And that's what I feel about it, is I'm not so interested, really.
We say and we see usually that something that is written down after some time is out of date. Or because it is written down in words, it is fixed. Can Sei-ki in be fixed in a book or not?
I might not be the best person to ask about that. I hear people, I've heard many times now, people saying that they read the book over and over, and that for them they find something new every time, and that it continues to speak to them. So I think that we did catch something of Sei-ki. I don't know if I could exactly say what.
Yes, I am one of them who goes back and reads the book or certain chapters again and again. It speaks. It's definitely not fixed at all.
No, and I think that this was the resonance. There was a real energy and love and resonance between us, or the book would not have been possible. This is where the book came from, resonance, and I think it carries that resonance.
Yes. Yes.
So there is some feeling, I think, but as you know, Sei-ki is an experience in this moment, always this moment, or the moment is always changing. So in that way, of course, you can't fix Sei-ki, or you can't catch it, I think.
So in a Sei-ki workshop, first of all, who can participate, and how it is delivered, if I can say this word? What is going on in a Sei-ki workshop?
Yeah.
Do we have pencils and notebooks? Do we keep notes? What are we doing?
Well, the first question first. I think we can say that anybody interested can come on a Sei-ki workshop. I mean, and I say that because over the years of working with Kishi and also people coming on my own workshops, most people have been shiatsu people, but there have always been a few others. There was a young boy, for instance, whose mother used to bring him along because she didn't have childcare, but he became interested. And he was about 10 or 11 at the time. And there were a few people who were they loved the feeling of a Sei-ki workshop, the atmosphere, but were not coming from a bodywork background at all. So I'd like to say anybody who can sit on the floor, and that's quite a big thing. You don't have to, but who's attracted to the work is welcome and can come, because we're not teaching techniques really. We're teaching a way of approaching other people, there is skill in touch, but it's not complicated, but there is skill that we're learning, but we all have to learn that if we want to. But what happens in a workshop varies, but I think just in general terms, my focus is on feeling, on people developing their sensitivity, developing their skill in touch, and developing their observational ability. And all that is within a relationship, learning how to be with other people in an open way, without a complicated agenda, just being with. So given that that's my aim, we generally will do some kind of feeling exercises through the workshop to develop, to clean our own stagnation, our own stress, our own noise, to clear and clean this. Often very simple exercises, but also absolutely key is the hands-on work. And I, like Kishi, demonstrate, because through demonstration actually is very important learning. People find this a little strange sometimes to begin with, because they think, oh, how boring to watch someone else work. But picking up this feeling,
yes,
is actually a very important way to learn Sei-ki. And the other piece of it is to just start using your own hands, and start just with a very basic plan, a basic instruction to use your own hands to start to touch. So this combination of exercises and observation and touch is what the workshops are about. And people come away, I think, almost always feeling much clearer and better in themselves, and more lighter heart, with a lighter heart.
with a lighter heart. And can Seiki be a profession? I mean, people who come to the workshops, why are they coming?
I think that maybe this has changed. Maybe this percentage has changed over the years, but I would have said that a good 80% of people who came on Sei-ki workshops over the years didn't really want to practice Sei-ki themselves, but they got a lot out of coming on the workshops, and they took what they learned into their other work, whether that's shiatsu, often shiatsu, or something else. It could be art, it could be architecture, and there are a lot of artists and one kind or another, and business. I mean, really wide variety of people, and taking something of this feeling back into life. So I'm all for that. I like that. I like it to be a venue where people can explore themselves and put down their armor and explore in a safe environment, and take that lightness back into their lives and creativity. But then there were always a few, very few, but I think this is growing, number of people who wanted to actually develop the touch skill and to go into Seiki as a profession. And of course, Kishi was a professional. He was a real professional. He had his, I mean, people maybe don't appreciate this, but he had all his qualifications and his insurance, and he was a very professional man when it came to his practice and his work. And I immediately, when I met Kishi, I mean, I'd been doing shiatsu, but then I became a Seiki practitioner, and that was my profession, still is. And there are a few others, and you, of course, who've taken it up as a profession. So yes, that people come on workshops for these two reasons. And so for many, it's just the workshop is a point in their year, or maybe once or twice a year, where they come to refresh themselves and to come back to themselves and take that back to life. And there are others for whom it's much more of a training, who go back to their clients and work with Sei-ki, and they may engage a bit more in the Sei-ki community and practice more specifically, and come for tutorials and discussions a little bit more. But I think it's a great profession. It's not easy, but then I don't think anything that's really creative and really skilled is easy. So, it takes a little while to really to really grasp, I think, but it's well worth it in my view.
Oh, okay. And if somebody wants to go on for and practice Seiki professionally, what advice would you give them?
Yeah.
How, I mean, if somebody comes for the first time in June and he would like to continue,
Yep.
what are the opportunities?
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, that's great. I'm always really, really pleased when people just catch this feeling and want to pursue it. And so I'm all for supporting people in doing that. And so if people want to continue with the training, I would recommend, there isn't a formal, we are, as you and I, of course, said, talking about a somewhat formal training, offering continuous training. But in any case, I think that you should have contact, a workshop contact or tutorial contact at least twice a year as a bare minimum, if that's what you're doing, just to keep the learning alive and keep the contact with people. You need to get sessions yourself, because to know how this feels and to feel the benefit yourself is a big part of learning and being confident in what you're doing. If you know that this kind of feeling is of value, of real value, then you're much more confident in offering it to other people. And you also know what you're looking for. So workshops, getting sessions from somebody reasonably experienced, reasonably often. And the main thing then is practice, to find people to practice on as often as you can. And then even further, the commitment not to fall back into techniques, but to pursue truth. So it's a little commitment there to the pursuit of feeling, the pursuit of the feeling of what's really there, for the truth of what's really there.
Okay, I like the words commitment, pursue truth. Yes, I think these describe the essence of this work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm very, very happy and grateful for you to come to Athens in June and be all together to share this work and to go deeper in exploration of it. And is there anything else that you would like to say before we finish today?
Well, what I haven't perhaps said,
Yes.
and perhaps you could comment too, is how wonderful it is to receive Sei-ki. I mean, I mentioned it when I first met Kishi, and just feeling this feeling of being met. You know, I think I'm not alone. I've heard this from a number of people now, that once you've experienced this real non-judgmental meeting and touch, it's like nothing else will quite do. Nothing else is quite what you want. And so it has, and I hear this from my clients as well. They say, oh, I don't know what you did, but I feel so much more myself. Or one chap recently said, it's amazing, the noise. I realize I've had noise in my head for months, and it's just gone. There's a real sense of peace and return to the center that comes with this work. this isn't about, you know, your back. You might still have backache when you come out. Often these things resolve themselves, but somehow it's about something much more fundamental than that. And
Mhm.
and it so for me it's really special work, and it's not easy, but it is special, and sometimes it's easy.
Yes. I am. I like very much what Kisi used to say, that when we are in an aeroplane, even the cloudless days, the sun is above the clouds and it is shining. So uh, for me, this saying encapsulates the essence of this work. It's what you said, that maybe you still have back pain, but uh, usually, yes, these things, these aches disappear after a session. But I have the feeling that it doesn't matter anymore.
No, it
It's
changes
not.
changes emphasis. Something shifts.
Yes. The emphasis is not there.
No.
Yes, it's not central.
Yeah.
So we can't wait having you here with us. And for information about the workshop, people can contact your website.
They can go to livinginresonance.com, but and also you'll be putting some
Yes, the material on Facebook.
Yeah.
And yes.
Great. I look forward to it.
Me too. Thank
Thank
you, Alice.